In a remarkably short space of time, COVID-19 went from being nowhere to suddenly being everywhere. And of course, the world has been largely under siege ever since, really, in March 2020. I thought it really important to have a chapter in the new book, in the new edition of Reinvention, that addressed COVID-19 and the changes that we've seen unleashed. I think there are a couple of different dimensions to this. There's a kind of institutionalized plane, and then there's another plane which concerns lifestyle change. And I look at that throughout the discussion around COVID-19 and reinvention. I mean, effectively where people saw a lot of these changes at an institutional level was the way in which companies and organizations and institutions suddenly said, look, it's okay to do something that previously they'd been quite concerned about. That is remote working. You know, what allegedly could never be done just simply happened overnight as people started plugging in to their devices from home and working away. And of course, throughout 2020, as we know the world over, people have attended more Zoom meetings than they ever thought possible. But at the same time, in terms of lifestyle change, when you weren't engaged in a Zoom meeting for work, people, contemporary women and men, were busy trying out and trying on new kinds of lifestyles. So people were busy, for example, attending Facebook funerals or doing Zoom parties. And in terms of how all of that plays out, I'm trying to bring together a discussion which I hope is both interesting and somewhat entertaining about the kind of thrills and spills along the way of how women and men navigated this kind of treacherous terrain of this really terrible and threatening global pandemic. There's another dimension to it though too, which I look at, and it also goes back to the earlier point I was making about artificial intelligence, and also the discussion about globalization, when I said that globalization has not come to an end. In fact, arguably, we're seeing this increasing intensification of global processes. And I think both COVID-19 and the impact of the digital revolution makes that really clear, because thankfully, as I say, what we saw was that communications, dialogue, information and ideas weren't quarantined, and actually people, organizations, companies and institutions sort of went into turbocharge mode when it came to global engagement. And we see this, I think, really clearly, and I explore it in parts of the book by looking at the responses and the reactions to COVID-19. The scientific attempts, the development of a kind of international scientific approach to combat and confront COVID-19. A good instance of that, for example, is the COVID-19 high computing consortium that was developed by such major players as IBM and Apple and Amazon and NASA, where effectively all of these multinationals and institutions made their supercomputers, 30 supercomputers available to scientists to internationally cooperate to try and accurately and at great speed identify a good molecule candidate that could withstand and get to work on the risks associated with the virus. So I think in lots of instances, all of these things really come together. We're in this world of blending now where these incredible opportunities sit together cheek by jowl with remarkable global risks. And this is really just the world of what Reinvention society in the early decades of the 21st century is. I try to argue in the book that we need to engage. All people, I think, need to engage with the core contours of Reinvention society. We need to know how that Reinvention society is changing the parameters of the world in which we live, but we need also to engage with the new political possibilities and these global risks that sit alongside each other cheek by jowl, as I say. These are enormous challenges, I think, for the social sciences, but at the same time, I think the social sciences can really rise to these challenges, and it will do so effectively if it can best engage a broader public debate. It's really important that social science doesn't just talk to itself. My argument in the book is that we shouldn't have researchers just talking to other researchers. We want to reach out and engage broader political publics.